Hey guys, how are you? Welcome back to my little music room. Another week gone by. It's been a pretty interesting week. A couple sad events this week, and a kind of a cool reunion on my part, and just a few updates. So we're not doing any vinyl comparisons today. We're not doing any talking about specific songs or walking through theme parks, but a few other things I want to share with you. So settle back. I don't know about you, but I've got my ginger tea all set to go. So take a sip and settle back, and let's hang out in the studio just for a little bit. I want to jump right into something. We don't ever talk about recipes. I kind of have to use a little bit of humor because there's kind of a little bit of sadness over this whole past week. The lovely and beautiful Bee Swedien passed away. Bruce Swedien's wife of many, many, many years. What a legend. What a sweet, sweet woman Bee was. And I'm holding a recipe. I'm actually going to have Maddie share this in just a minute that Bee actually hand wrote for my wife, Debbie. But I want to talk to you about Bee just for a couple minutes. I'm sure I met Bee. I think the first time I met Bruce would have been on the soundtrack for The Color Purple. It was either The Color Purple or Running Scared. You'll have to forgive me. I can't remember which one came first. Bruce did remarkable recordings on both those projects, and I maybe Running Scared came first, but it doesn't matter right now. Bruce is Swedish and I'm Swedish. I hadn't really joined the club yet. I was still a runner at Westlake Studios, and here was the legend Bruce Swedien working on these remarkable projects like Color Purple, produced by Quincy Jones, and even Running Scared, which is a really fun record, the Billy Crystal, Gregory Hines movie. With the Michael McDonald song Sweet Freedom. My goodness, pull that song up and just let that blast in your car for a few minutes, and what a treat. That's when and then of course on Color Purple you've got Miss Seeley's Blues and Quincy's just crazy cinematic score. Behind the scenes, literally just a quarter of a step back behind Bruce, was Bee. Bee was this beautiful Swedish woman that Bruce married. They were young. I didn't look up a bunch of facts because that's not important right now. But they were high school sweethearts, and Bruce adored Bee. Everybody loved Bee Swedien. Bee didn't come to the studio every day. They had a ranch. They had a ranch up in Thousand Oaks, California. And she rode horses. She had chickens. She'd bring us, we always had fresh eggs, fresh organic eggs from Bee's chicken coop. And they had cats. They had cats all over that ranch that, just to kind of keep some of the rodent population down. Bee loved animals. She would go horseback riding and take care of those cats and take care of the chickens. And she had a full-time job running that ranch, taking care of Bruce, and just being this amazing woman. Bee would come to the studio maybe twice a month. It depended on the project and how far we were into the project, but a lot of times we would have, I've talked before about Family Fridays, especially on Michael's projects. We would love it, honestly love it, when Bee would come to the studio. Bruce would light up. He would light up like a sophomore in high school when a pretty girl just walked into the room. That's how he responded to his wife. He would jump up and give her a hug, give her a kiss. They were just so sweet and so in love. A beautiful marriage, and it was a beautiful thing to see and to be a part of. As I got more pulled into the circle, and it really was Bruce. It was Bruce and Michael. And Quincy. I mean, I was accepted by everybody, and I'm proud of that, and I'm humbled by that. But I think Bruce and I had a kind of a special relationship because we're both Swedish. Now you can go into the whole, whatever they are, the DNA tests, and apparently I'm not 100% Swedish. There's some Finnish and Norwegian, and it doesn't matter. But we always, we were raised, in Swedish homes. Bruce and Bea are from Minneapolis, St. Paul area, and that's where my family comes from. Bea was raised on the mission field in India, and she had some of the most amazing stories, and she could click into an Indian dialect just on the snap of a finger and tell us about growing up in India, the culture, the food, the people, the animals, the whole thing. So she had a very colorful, is that the right word? Just an amazing childhood. And I should remember, and like I say, I didn't do a bunch of homework. I just want to talk for a minute. At some point in her childhood, they moved back to Minneapolis, and that's when Bruce and Bea met. And she's written a book, by the way. I think it's called Under the Red Blanket. If you want to learn a little bit more about Bea Swedien, I think she's written 2 books, in fact. One of them about being a studio wife, being Bruce's wife. But what a fascinating figure. I mean, she she went through the whole process of Bruce's career supporting Bruce. And I don't want to be inappropriate, certainly not disrespectful in the least, but this was old school. This was, Bruce was working in Chicago, I think at Universal Recording, and Bruce and Bea have told us many stories about Bruce would literally work all night. He'd work like daytime sessions, then he'd do, bebop sessions and more, fun, crazy music all night, go home, and Bea would actually, and again, I'm no disrespect, but she would almost like give him a sponge bath, just let him sleep for a few minutes, and then he'd put a clean shirt on and go back and do it again. That's old school. That's just old, support each other, love each other, till death do us part, partnership. That was Bea. My wife Deb and Bea were very close for quite some time. And there was a little bit of a father, son, mother, daughter type relationship between the 4 of us, and it was very sweet. And by the way, as I'm saying this, Bruce and Bea's daughters, Roberta and Julie, I genuinely loved your folks, and I love you guys, and I'm offering my sincerest condolences, and I mean that. I'm so sorry about your loss. Your folks were just absolute 1 in a million. But Deb and I would go to Bruce and Bea's house. They took us on trips. They took us out to their beautiful boat, the Odin. We stayed on the boat a few times. We went to Mexico together. We went to the Del Coronado at least once or twice down in San Diego. And Bea would tell stories just like you wouldn't believe. It's almost funny. And again, everything I say, I'm almost being hesitant because I love these people so much. Bea was probably a little better storyteller than Bruce was, and Bruce might, start a story, and Bea would take it and just run with it. And sometimes, not every story was G-rated, family friendly, and Bruce would be like, Bea, stop. And it was so sweet and so endearing. And the 2 of them together, we got to be such good friends. And they gave us 2 cats, Cece and Spike, I think it was. These 2 crazy cats. I don't know. They found them at the ranch or something, and we adopted those cats from Bruce and Bea. And we loved those cats. They were our Bruce and Bea, kind of our connection to Bruce and Bea for years and years. Even after I stopped working with Michael, or stopped working on albums, I should say, we would go to Swedish festivals together, and the whole relationship was just beautiful. Really, really, really beautiful people. So Bea would make anybody that's worked with Bruce in the studio, their ears might perk up a little bit when I share this. Bea made something called Pioneer cookies. They're anything but healthy, And these are the handwritten recipes. For some reason or other, Bee wrote 2 of them for my wife. We have other recipes downstairs. The first ingredient is 1 cup of butter, 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup of white sugar, and 1 cup of brown sugar, and 2 eggs. So I mean, right off the bat, we're heading right down a fitness lane, and they're amazing. Oatmeal and cornflakes and walnuts and cocoa. Anybody that's worked in the studio with Bruce, hopefully you were fortunate enough to be there on a day when Bruce would either bring in a box of these cookies or Bee would drive over and they would just be fresh, hot out of the oven. And you have never seen people, just grown adults, just shoving cookies into their mouth and crumbs down their face and, sending out for a half gallon of milk for everybody to have with their cookies. What a sweet lady. One particular memory I have, I'm going to tell you a little secret. Last week, my buddy Chris Lacey and I walked around Magic Kingdom at Disney World. And it was so much fun. It was he asked me a bunch of questions and I got to show him the park. And when we got to one part of the park, I said, I'd kind of like to talk about Bee Swedien. And I did. I talked probably for 6 minutes. And would you believe Brad Sundberg, the techie guy, the audio guy, my microphone failed. And so we've got video of me talking and just utter silence, which maybe that's for the best sometimes. I don't know. But I told Chris a story and I'd like to tell it to you. It's so funny. I pulled this record out and you'd think that I'm like super organized and sometimes I'm not. But this is Quincy's Back on the Block album. Quincy Jones' Back on the Block. We all love Quincy. We were mixing Back on the Block. That is probably the most time I've ever spent in a studio, like consecutively. I think I slept on the floor, I don't know, 2 or 3 nights. You just grabbed a packing blanket and just curled up and found a place to sleep. And it was Bruce, man, Bruce and Quincy have endurance like nobody's business. When it was time to buckle in and really mix an album, and of course Rod Temperton. So, I couldn't be the one that was complaining about being tired. I had to keep going right along with the big boys. But we got to the very last song, a song called Secret Garden. And that was it. We were done. We'd been working and working and working, and you're so tired that it's almost like pain. Your body just hurts. You want to sleep so bad. And I was making the cassettes for the album, for the mix. Bruce had finished mixing it, and we were doing the playback. It was just me, Bruce, and Bee. That was it. Just the 3 of us in the control room. All the lights were off. We had every light in the control room off. And so the only lights, if you've ever been in a beautiful recording studio where it's just the lights of the meters and the lights of the equipment behind you, maybe we had the overhead lights on just, like 2%. So it's very, for lack of a better word, it's very romantic. It's just a cool vibe to be in a studio like that. I don't know if it was 11 o'clock at night or 6 in the morning. I don't remember. I just remember being exhausted to the point of pain. I was overloading cassettes and getting the tape started and to, make these final cassettes for everybody. And I noticed kind of some movement in the middle of the control room as the song started to play. And Bruce and Bee were dancing. Just this beautiful, slow dance. Just the 2 of them. And I kind of I couldn't leave, I had work to do, but I had so much respect for them and for that moment that I kind of wanted, to give them their space. But it was also kind of cool that they trusted me to be in that moment. And even, from across the room loading cassette machines. And it's just a beautiful memory. I mean, you take all of the trips that we did, the laughs, the amazing dinners. Bee was such an amazing cook. Bee's Pioneer cookies, everybody in the studio loved Bee, adored Bee. And in my mind, it all kind of comes down to that dance to Secret Garden on Quincy's Back on the Block. So sweet memories with them. I miss them both. And I, again, express my sincerest condolences to their family and friends. The industry has definitely lost some legends in the past many months and years. And Bea Swedien is kind of one of those unsung heroes that is maybe just a bit more in the background, but her pioneer cookies and her smile and her support to Bruce will always have a tremendous impact on me and on a lot of other people. So God bless Bruce and Bea and their families. I don't want this to be just entirely sad, and I'm not trying to make it that way, but we lost somebody else this past week, and that's Tom Bahler. I was not as close to Tom as I was to Bruce and Bea, but I did work with Tom many times, and Tom has participated, I think, in 3 or 4 of my live events. He was in very poor health these past few years, so he never came to my events in person. We always would just, Zoom him, do a Zoom call with him and have him up on the screen. He was such a good sport, and he just loved doing it. He loved answering questions and telling stories. So Tom might be another one. For those of you that are not involved in the music industry, you may not know the name, right off the bat. The best way I can describe Tom is a renowned songwriter, arranger, and producer. And the word, when they say arranger, vocal arranger is the best way to describe it. So let me give you a couple examples. I'm going to go back in time here quite a bit because Tom had just a magnificent life in the music industry. The Partridge Family. Can you believe it? Tom Bahler provided background vocals in the 70s for the Partridge Family. Quincy Jones, Mellow Madness, and Body Heat in 1974 and 1975. And then in 1978, he co-produced Ease On Down the Road for the Wiz soundtrack. So you can already kind of see a path. He's already working with Quincy from the mid-70s. Then he meets up with Michael in 1978. And Tom was an integral part of the team. Bobby Sherman, he wrote the hit "Julie, Do You Love Me?" Cher, he wrote "Foxy Lady." But then now we're gonna get serious. In 1985, he served as associate producer, and I'm gonna put this in there, even though it's not written, as vocal arranger for "We Are the World." 1985. I may have said 75. 1985. So "We Are the World," I hadn't met Michael yet. Deb and I had just gotten married, moved to LA. I was just starting my job at Westlake. "We Are the World," for those of you under, a certain age, if your birthday starts, with 20 or even maybe, 1995, you may or may not remember "We Are the World." Maybe you've heard it. It was crazy for Quincy to get that whole cast of characters. I mean, there's been documentaries and books and all kinds of stuff, but Tom Bahler was the associate producer. But I remember him telling stories about the choosing who was going to sing which line and who he was going to put duets together. Basically, I had to do it like on the spot, knowing what their voices sounded like and combining them, so you'd have these textures that he built. And "We Are the World" is another one of those songs, I don't want to say that it's like Thriller, but I've talked about Thriller before, where everyone thinks of Thriller as Halloween and, the video and all that. And sometimes I'll tell people, just shut all that off and listen to the song, because it's a magnificent piece of music. And I would almost say the same thing about "We Are the World." It's not my favorite, pop song from the mid-'80s, but it's a pretty magnificent piece of music. And the fact that they pulled it off essentially in one night, with some additional overdubs, is pretty crazy. Tom was right in the middle of that. So listen to those those voices and how he matched them and blended them, choosing who would work out. And he's talked about that. Look up Tom Bahler. Just do yourself a favor and do a little deep dive into Tom's work. Just brilliant guy. And now I'm gonna tell kind of a personal story here. In 1979, Michael released a song that was written by Tom Bahler. I was still I know exactly where I was. I was living in Santa Cruz, California. When I was going into my freshman year in high school, I got my first little girlfriend. And my goodness, I was just smitten. And it was sweet and innocent and cute and just two awkward kids that had a little boyfriend girlfriend holding hands at a summer camp. But when you're that age, I was kind of like, oh man, this is forever. This is who I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. Well, of course it doesn't work that way. So a few months into one school, she lived in a different town. She was miles away. So once school started, we're like writing letters back and forth. There was no cell phones, no texting, no WhatsApp, none of that. It was just letters, actual handwritten letters. Well, that went on for a while, and then she sent me, the sad letter, the dear Brad, dear John letter. She's like, I'm going to school and I'm meeting other boys, and this was fun. It was kind of fun to meet you at summer camp, but it's it's time to move on. Crushed. It was like a mortar and pestle into my chest. It was just awful. And you have your first little puppy love thing, and then it gets ripped away from you. I'm not making this up. That's when She's Out of My Life, written by Tom Bahler, was on the radio like every hour. It was a huge hit for Michael, and every time I'd hear it, I'd get all sad, thinking about my little girlfriend and how she dumped me. And the cool thing was I was able to tell Tom that story, and I was able to tell Michael that story, and they were both tickled by it. Michael especially thought that was the funniest thing. If I'm not mistaken, Tom had been dating and was in a very serious relationship with Karen Carpenter, and they had a very painful breakup. Tom has told me the story, and it's backed up on Wikipedia, so that it's got to be true. Karen Carpenter broke up with Tom, and he wrote She's Out of My Life. And then Michael just took that song and made it his. The whole quivering voice and, crying at the end of the song. And that just launched his career to a whole different level. So not in any way am I comparing myself and my dumb little high school story to Tom Bahler and Karen Carpenter. But it was fun to be able to share that story, that song really did have a very personal impact on me. So Tom worked on a lot of projects, a lot of film scores, and he was always there on Michael albums. If Michael needed some help with arranging background vocals, Michael's beautiful harmonies, Tom was quite often first call. Here, basically in the course of a few days, we lost both Bee Swedien and Tom Bahler, two people that had a tremendous impact on the music industry in different ways, and just sweet, cool, amazing people. Okay, let's shift gears. A few days ago, my buddy Jared Bradshaw texted me, and he said, Brady, what are you doing on Saturday? And I said, I don't know. What are we doing? And Teddy Riley has written a book, and he's doing kind of a booksellers tour. And he was going to be just south of Atlanta, Georgia. Jared said, let's go. Let's go. You can reconnect with Teddy. I'd love to meet Teddy. And we did. Early Saturday morning, we jumped in the car and we drove up to McDonough, Georgia, which is Jared's hometown. And there's a really cool bookstore there, and Teddy Riley was going to have a book signing in the afternoon. So we had our books. We go upstairs, and number one, we had an amazing lunch. You can't beat a Southern cafe for really good home cooked food. And we went up. Teddy came in. It was so funny because we were kind of towards the back, and Teddy as he was talking, I kind of felt like he kept looking at me, and I've gotten a lot of, I've gotten less hair and more gray hair and a lot more in the midsection than I did the last time I saw him. But afterwards we got to go up and, grab an autograph and say hi. And I'm not going to lie, I don't think I'd seen Teddy since probably 1993. And he threw his arms around me, and I was able to give him a big hug. And we just, we didn't have a lot of time because there was a long line, and I wanted to be respectful of his time. But man, it was nice to reconnect. Now, some of you, this is Teddy's book, and he signed it for me. That's pretty cool. Yes, there's a picture in there of him and Michael, and yes, it's kind of been photoshopped a little bit. Here's my take on a lot of things. Life is short. I don't want to get wrapped up in, Teddy endorsed a certain project or whatever. Not everybody's perfect. Certainly not me. But man, when you've got, I met Teddy for the first time. In fact, I was able to give him a little video of the first time that he came into, we were working on, I think Drives Me Wild. And I worked with Teddy quite, not as much as I worked with Bill Bottrell and Bee Swedien, but I did work with Teddy a fair bit on the Dangerous album. And then I got to go to Virginia Beach, and I did a lot of the tour prep for the Dangerous tour at Future Records, Future Studios in Virginia Beach back in 90. Don't get mad at me. I think it was 91, something like that. And Teddy was just a sweet guy. Everybody loved Teddy. So be careful, with, he's canceled. I try not to do that. If somebody is just, saying some really stupid, ridiculous things, then that's different. But I'm not going to get twisted up over, a photoshopped photo. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. Go buy Teddy's book, have a glass of wine, and relax a little bit. But it's just, been so long, and yet it seems like it went so fast. And so just being able to reconnect with Teddy, and I know he's been through some rough times, and but man, he lights up a room when he walks in, exactly the same way he did when he would walk into the studio with us, years and years ago. So blessings on you, Teddy, and your beautiful wife. It was an absolute pleasure to see you again. And I can't wait to see you, hopefully many, many more times. So those are kind of the three things I wanted to touch on with you guys was rest in peace, my dear friend, sweet, sweet friend, Bee Swedien, and Tom Bahler, two significant losses this past week. And then being able to reconnect with Teddy. Just kind of out of the blue, my buddy Jared kind of gave me the nudge, and I got to spend a day with Jared, and then go hang out with Teddy for a little bit and just reconnect. So I don't know, reach out to someone you love, reconnect with them. If it's been a minute, pick up the phone, shoot them an email or a text or whatever you do to communicate with your friends, because it's a great journey and it goes fast. So enjoy it. Man, coming up, I'm going to be jumping on a flight here in a minute and heading for Paris. We're going back to Abbey Road. Can you believe it? Abbey Road Institute in Paris. That's where it all began. In fact, let me tell you one other little story. I kind of wrote about this in social media this past week, but I'm going to tell you anyway. It was back in 2011. How can it have been that long? Deb and I were having dinner at Bruce and Bee's house up in Ocala, Florida. And Saida Garrett was there, the writer of Man in the Mirror. And there were like these 5 or 7, I call them kids, but the young people from France, from, Paris and kind of the surrounding area. They were just huge MJ fans and huge Bee Swedien fans. And here Bruce and Bee just invite them into their home. And then they invite us up. And we had this magnificent dinner together. These crazy French fans. And they wanted Bruce and Bee to come to Paris. And I think Bruce had already done it once. I think, forgive me, I don't remember the whole chronology. Bruce wasn't real big on travel at that point in his life. And he said, I don't really want to go, but talk to Braddy Daddy. He's sitting right here. Maybe he'll go. He's a better storyteller than I am anyway. So next thing you know, we're kind of working out the details about coming to Paris, France to present an In the Studio with MJ. And that's kind of how this whole thing began. That was the beginning of In the Studio with MJ, was, these French nationals that invited me and Deb to come over at Bruce and Bee's house with Saida Garrett sitting there. So we're going to be, I'm going to be going back to Paris in a couple days. We're going to be back at Abbey Road Institute. Now, I know you've heard me say this before. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But we have done a complete rebuild of In the Studio with MJ. If you were at one of my events in the fall, it is dramatically different, the one that I'm going to present in Paris in a couple days. And I'm a little nervous, because I had the old one down pretty solid. And now we've got new segments, new videos. There's stuff you've never seen before. And I'm so excited to be presenting it in Paris coming up this weekend. Then at the end of the month, at the end of March, we're going to be in New York. One day only at the Hit Factory. It's not called the Hit Factory anymore. It's called Fount Studios. But it's the Hit Factory, 421 West 54th Street. I'm going to be there with my buddy Tony Black, and we're going to be live streaming. We're going to be live streaming part of the day. 3 hours of it is going to be live streamed. And then for the in-person guests, we're going to shut the camera off, and the second half of the day is going to be without the camera. So you're not going to get everything on the live stream, I'm sorry, but you'll, if you can't make it to New York, you're at least going to get to meet Tony and hear some crazy fun stories about us making the History album at Hit Factory in New York in 1994. How can it have been that long ago? So that's what we got coming up. Oh, and then Bucharest. We're going to be in Bucharest, Romania in April. And we've finally got the venue nailed down. So hopefully by the time you hear this podcast, we're going to have tickets on sale. So Bucharest in April. I got a couple other things I'm working on in May and June. And then in August, we're almost certainly going to be at Record One in Los Angeles. Now, some people say, Brad, why aren't you going to LA in June? Well, the problem is the World Cup is in LA in June. And traffic is going to be bananas. And I lived in LA for a long time. Hotel rooms are going to be crazy. So I've decided to push it back to August, and we're going to celebrate Michael's birthday at Record One, and it's going to be a really, really fun weekend. Working on getting tickets up for that, just have to finalize some details for that. So we've got a lot of stuff coming up. But I wanted to hang out with you just for a little bit. Patreon. We've been talking about Patreon since ever, and we're finally getting serious about it. I'm putting more time and attention into the podcast and into our social media. Maddie, of course, is behind the scenes working like crazy, does a great job. So it may or may not be up by the time this podcast comes out, but it is something that we're working on, and we've heard really positive stuff from you guys. So that's part of the inspiration behind it, and just to kind of cover our costs for the work that we do. So there you go. Be blessed. Love you guys. Thank you for hanging out. And go give We Are the World a listen. Go give Quincy's Secret Garden a listen. Think about my dear friends, Tom Bahler and Bee Swedien. And I can't wait to see you hopefully in Paris or in New York or in some studio somewhere along the line. All right? Have a great week. Take care. In the Studio, the podcast is produced by Maddie Sundberg. Theme music performed by Buddy Nuanez. Artwork by Andy Healy. Studio electronics provided by Golden Age Project, and studio acoustics provided by Acoustic Sciences Corporation. My name is Brad Sundberg. Thanks so much for hanging out with us in the studio.